1980. Richard finally had the promise of the money to make this film and the backing of the Indian government. He must have realized that the guys he originally wanted were all 20 years too old to play the young Ghandi who was thrown off the train. And that has to be your starting point. Michael Attenborough, having seen my Hamlet, said to his dad, when you get your shortlist down, you've got to see this guy. So I think it was a combination of Michael talking to Richard, and also, thanks to my work with the Royal Shakespeare Company, I believe was something that Richard could see he could mould and use and shape. Because if you don't have a grasp of the epic, if you don't have a grasp of the historical consequences of what your character is doing, then I don't think the role would have been playable.
Just move your black arse back to third class, or I'll have you thrown over the next station.
But I always go first class. I've traveled all...
The backbone of this character is where the film starts. Do not throw young men off trains. It will backfire.
I will write to the press, here and in England, and I will use the courts.
You will cause a great deal of trouble. Our position
We
in
are
this
members of the Empire. And we come from an ancient civilization. Why should we not walk on the pavements like other men?
There are certain figures that, thank goodness, are recorded on film, on newsreel footage, that when one beholds them, they do have an enormous effect on the beholder. And Ghandi was one of those silhouettes on history's landscape that I knew about that did have this effect upon me. And I watched, I think it was 5 hours of newsreel footage in one sitting. I left the cinema absolutely convinced that this was impossible. But over the next few weeks, obviously I had taken that information in. Obviously that child, the child in me that was such a brilliant mimic at school and kept the classroom enthralled and kept my family's living room enthralled by my extremely accurate impersonations of people, kicked in.
They may torture my body, break my bones, even kill me. Then they will have my dead body, not my obedience.
When I arrived in India, and I was still losing weight, getting my suntan, and learning my lines, however abbreviated that sounds, that is a colossal part of preparation. And of course people could say, oh, come on, Ben, there's more to it than that. Not really. But it's how you get that suntan. It's how you acquire that darkening of the skin in India. It's how you lose weight but keep really fit and strong. And it's how you learn your lines. So, I am with Simon Kay, the sound man, having lunch, but we haven't started shooting yet. And I, of course, have got, I think it's a tape recording of one speech that Ghandi made. And I used to listen to this speech because I love mimicking people. And I recorded a few phrases from this speech. Of course, it didn't have the background noise, it didn't have that wonderful scratchy hiss that the old BBC or All India radio microphones used to have. It was quite clean. I played it to Simon, and this is Simon listening to me, okay? You see, Ben, that's what you've got to sound like. And I said, Simon, that's me.
Where there's injustice, I've always believed in fighting. The question is, do you fight to change things or do you fight to punish? For myself, I've found we're all such sinners we should leave punishment to God.
Most of the information that gets into the camera happens while that person's acting. That's the best kind of acting. It's the best kind of cinema. It's happening now and the camera has caught it. No amount of research, poring over books, staring at photographs, listening to tape recordings, no amount of research of any kind would have given me the information that those guys gave me when they came towards me with, you know, smiling and nodding and sometimes touching my clothes, even my feet. And that's information for me as an actor. Sometimes you cannot get information any other way than experiencing what it must have been like for that person.
Who the devil are you?
My name is Ghandi, Mohandas K. Ghandi.
Well, whoever you are, we don't want you here. I suggest you get back on that train before it leaves.
They seem to want me.
When we made this film, which is probably one of the last real epic films, nobody was digitalized in. No crowds were digitalized in. I had to work with these people.
To gain independence, we must prove worthy of it. There must be Hindu, Muslim unity, always.
The treatment that I received from the people of India can be broken down into perhaps more than one category, because there's a terrible caste system in India. 5 rigid divisions of caste and class. And the upper class historians and some politicians were abrasive, dismissive, unkind, and had "you are going to fail" as practically every other sentence, you know. And when the film came out, they were saying, there are 4,000 errors in Ghandi, you know, I mean, ludicrous things. Yeah. I don't know how Richard dealt with it, but it was monumental on his part, that achievement alone, to get that film made. So sadly, there were elements there that were not cooperative. There were other elements that were extraordinarily cooperative, including Pandit Nehru's daughter, Indira Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister at the time, and her sons, who were alive at the time. Terrible, all gone now. And there was one grandson of Gandhi that I met. He had lunch with me, and I was dressed as the old man at the time and fully prepared to shoot straight after lunch. I was pretty nervous sitting next to him, as you can imagine. I think I was eating some peas and they were flying off my fork. I was so nervous. And he didn't say a word. At the end of lunch, he said, "I've got nothing to say other than that you are being guided by unseen forces, and I wish you well." Now, I wasn't actually being guided by unseen forces. I was doing my job. However, that was an extremely generous thing to say. And maybe he was referring to the fact that there were people in India who were very, very protective of me, of Richard, and of our film set.
It's very hard for me to see this as a solution to the 20th century's problems.
I have friends who keep telling me how much it costs them to keep me in poverty.
I think that Candice was inspired casting because she's so beautiful and so blonde. Simply for Richard to put her on the screen with the character I was playing at that stage of his life was a great idea. Some people were even slightly shy of it when they watched the film. They couldn't accept the fact that, of course, women found him enormously compelling. All powerful men are compelling.
Yes, I have heard of Life magazine. I've even heard of Margaret Bourke-White, but I don't know why either should be interested in an old man sitting alone in prison while the rest of the world is blowing itself to pieces.
Well, you're the only man I know who makes his own clothes.
But for me, that's not much of an accomplishment.
I didn't request a spinning wheel. It's in the script. Ghandi is sitting spinning. I thought, my goodness, Ben, this is tricky. You can't spin. And I think within the limits of danger to life and limb, I always like to do my own stunts. So I decided that this stunt of spinning, I'd like to have a crack at myself. And what I found really empowering as an actor, and extremely difficult, unimaginably for me, was to spin and talk at the same time.
They're only clinging to old dreams and trying to split us in the old way. But the will has gone. Independence will fall like a ripe apple. The only question is when and how.
I think Martin Sheen and I shared one of the greatest moments of our lives as actors.
Well, trying to keep up with you is like chasing a jackrabbit.
And you've come all this way because you think something is going to happen.
Is it?
Perhaps. I've come here to think about it.
Sitting on the wall, talking about the place I was born, hitting upon the idea of the Salt March. You know, filming involves several takes with different lenses and different angles, and therefore we had wonderful opportunities to enjoy the scene many times. And there were some takes that, of course, are used in the film, where we were so acquainted with the language that we were using and so trusting of each other that Martin said, I was so inside that scene that I had forgotten what you were going to say next. And it only came to me when you said it, and my lines only came to me as I opened my mouth. I think he was trying to say it was effortless film acting at its best, and that's marvellous.
He's addressed this letter directly to you, has he?
Yes, sir, he has. The usual thing. India's salt belongs to India. Then he says flatly that he personally is going to lead a raid tomorrow on the Darasana salt works.
Thank him for his letter and put him in jail.
I knew John from the National Theatre, and I love Johnny. John Gielgud is a national treasure. We should be deeply grateful that he's still alive and that he is one of our great voices, and I think the greatest actor ever that I've worked with. To bring to his character such disdain and bafflement at the very idea of independence, utterly baffling.
It is impossible for me to ignore that you are in a different category from any person I have ever tried, or am likely to try. Nevertheless, it is my duty to sentence you to 6 years imprisonment.
The great Trevor Howard, we had a scene with in the courtroom, and every time he stood before the prisoner, he reversed the usual ritual of the prisoner rising and standing before the judge, and he stood before the prisoner, and the whole of the courtroom stands. He's another great moment in cinema, inspired by Richard, but beautifully performed by a man who brings onto the screen tremendous worldliness, wisdom, authority, and a bitter disappointment in the conduct of his fellow men towards each other.
Mr. Ghandi, even if His Majesty could waive all other considerations, he has a duty to the millions of his Muslim subjects who are a minority in this realm, and experience suggests that his troops and his administration are essential in order to secure the peace.
I just had some brief scenes with Johnny Mills at the conference table, but again, faced with that wall of English military and diplomatic and political might, as an actor from the Royal Shakespeare Company who hadn't met these people before, it was very good for my performance, because faced with this array of knights, Sir Johnny Mills, Sir John Gielgud, you know, these were knights of the theatre.
Sora was sent to tell me I must rake and cover the latrine.
That's right. Everyone takes their turn.
It is the work of untouchables.
In this place, there are no untouchables, and no work is beneath any of us.
I'm your wife.
All the more reason.
Rohini Hattangari was cast as his wife, and I found her very stalwart and strong as a fellow actor, and she was one of my keys into the Indian temperament at its best and at its worst. She showed me a lot, walking around and saying, no, 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 look that way. And Rohini and Roshan Seth and Alik Padamsi particularly, very intelligent man, as well as being wonderful actors to work with. And therefore, when playing a scene with them, I became more Indian. But this is what happened with Ghandi anyway, because he was educated in England. If Ghandi wanted to have a cup of tea with an Englishman, he was very English. He spoke beautiful English.
I am a Muslim, and a Hindu, and a Christian, and a Jew, and so are all of you. When you wave those flags and shout, you send fear into the hearts of your brothers. That is not the India I want. Stop it. For God's sake, stop it.
Before Richard filmed the funeral, which was very close to the anniversary of the funeral itself, Richard advised me to come and join him by the main camera on the bridge, because it's always been a fantasy, hasn't it, of all of us to be able to witness, quote unquote, our own funeral. And Tom Smith, the great makeup artist, and I had worked on the wax cadaver of the dead Mahatma Gandhi. So I was getting ready to watch the funeral with Sir Richard, and Richard said, "This dummy doesn't look right, and would I please come onto the set, lie under the flag?" I did get under the flag. I said to Steve Lanning, "How many people are around?" I'm lying. How many people are around this lorry now, Stephen? He said, "About 80,000, sir." "Oh, this end, sir. This end." "Oh, and how many people are here altogether?" "About 400,000, sir." "Oh." At the beginning of the procession, rosebuds hitting my face, because Indians are very mischievous and they wanted to make me go, "Ugh," and they could all have a good laugh and ruin the take. Didn't move. Didn't blink. So they soon stopped doing that. And then they started to throw petals. And they started to sing. And they started to cry. And they went quiet. And the only thing you could hear in front of, from where I was the crunch, crunch, crunch of these servicemen. I think there were 400 of them pulling the truck. Apparently that's the only thing for parts of the procession that you could hear on the day. It was identical to the day. The crowd went very quiet indeed. And I got to the end of the journey, and as we drove away, my driver, Sadarji Gumar, said, "Well done, sir." That's all he said. "Well done, sir." But from him, that was terrific.
In the words of General George C. Marshall, the American Secretary of State, Mahatma Gandhi has become the spokesman for the conscience of all mankind. He was a man who made humility and simple truth more powerful than empires. And Albert Einstein added, "Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this, ever in flesh and blood, walked upon this earth."